Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Ramadan Journey. We're delighted to have you with us. I am your host, Afif Khan, and we'll be conducting these programs throughout Ramadan. Our guide through this journey is once again Imam Muhammad al-Asi. He is the author of the Ascendant Quran, to which we have been referring as we do quite a bit of this analysis and this discussion. Today we'll be talking about the second ayah in the cluster of ayat about Ramadan. This is the 184th ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah. And we'll ask Imam al-Asi to discuss the ayah, to quote it for us first, and then we'll enter into a short discussion about the ayah. What we'd like to really know as you discuss this ayah is what conditions exempt a Muslim who's otherwise healthy and capable of fasting from actually observing the fast in Ramadan.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين رحمة الله للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. The ayah walks us through the process of our fast obligation. We spoke about the first ayah, and now we are beginning to move on. This is a journey. We're beginning to move on to the second ayah. The second ayah begins by saying, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ, a certain amount of days. Another rendition of this, a numerical few amount of days. أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ. Because you feel that at the end of Ramadan. Approaching Ramadan, you feel, oh my God, this is going to be a whole month. Right. How am I going to do this? You have this type of reservation, this type of feeling, maybe I'm not going to, I'm going to fall. I'm not going to be able to do something during it. But once you go through it,
you hardly notice it.
Yeah, the words ring in your mind at the end of the month. The ayyam ma'dudat, they just replay themselves in your mind, in your internal thoughts. Ayyam ma'dudat. The meaning here is that don't think this is going to be a long and extended fasting. Don't think that this is going to be something very difficult to do. Don't think this is not going to end. No, it's going to be over. Before you know it, it's going to be over. Ayyamam ma'dudat. And it says, to get to your question, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. Whoever of you, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ, whoever of you, مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ, whoever of you is sick or is traveling, whoever of you is in failing health or on a journey, whoever of you has an ailment or is in traveling status. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. Then another amount of days. This is the literal meaning or the literal translation of it. What is being said here is whoever is sick and whoever is traveling will have to make up for these exempted days with an equal amount of days at a later time.
Is it during the rest of the year?
During the rest of the year.
Up to the next Ramadan.
Up to the next Ramadan, exactly. But, let's say this happens in Ramadan. Here I usually don't go into fiqhi details, but just to give some people, because I know from experience some people are really attached to, so what did the fuqaha say about that? What did the Islamic scholars and ulama say about this? Well, they said something like this. If in the month of Ramadan you broke, let's say, 5 days of fasting, you were sick in those 5 days, or you were traveling in those 5 days, and these were 5 consecutive days. So when the month of Ramadan is over and you have to make up for this in the coming 11 months, do you fast these 5 days in the consecutive manner that you broke the fast in? Or
do you segment it?
You can segment it. You can break it up and say, okay, this week I'm going to fast a couple of days. Next week I'm going to fast 1 day. And the week after that I'm going to fast 2 days. Or this month I'm going to fast 1 day. The following month I'm going to fast another day. And so you take 5 months to make up. This is the type of scholarly opinion that goes back and forth. And with Allah's mercy, and with His knowledge of who we are, it's left, I think, up to the best of your conscience to do it in the way that does not violate Allah's instructions and does not cause you any harm in your health or your well-being.
So it's not a sin with this license that's given for sickness and travel. It's not a sin to miss a day in Ramadan fasting if you make it up.
Yeah, don't be more Ramadan-like, Ramadan type than Ramadan itself.
Yes, you use the license that Allah has given you.
Yeah.
In the next segment, we're going to get into what traveling in sickness means. Are there criteria, are there definition for what constitutes travel and what constitutes sickness? Is it important? And for the time being, we have to take a break and let our sponsors do their thing. And we hope that you come back with us. Please stay tuned.
Welcome Ramadan. Welcome Ramadan.
And welcome back. We've been talking about the license to stop fasting due to sickness or traveling. And so we're going to go ahead and continue that discussion now. And so within the Islamic literature, from the example of the Prophet ﷺ and any ayat in the Quran, are there any hard and fast rules or criteria for what defines sickness and what defines traveling? Or is it something which is basically left up to the conscience?
Yeah. No, there isn't. And this is an expression of Allah's mercy. Because human beings come in different shapes and forms and different ages and different... there's so many variations that it is defining sickness and defining what constitutes a journey is left up to the conscience of the individual Muslim himself or herself. And this is the area, as I said, I just don't, I try to avoid going into it in detail because there are so many opinions and they range between, when it comes to defining a journey, it comes to a short distance. There are some fuqaha and some scholars that gave it a definition of a short distance. And there are others who gave it a definition of a long distance. But the bottom line is, this is left up to the individual Muslim's conscience to say to him or herself that I am traveling now, or that I am sick now. By the way, under the word sickness or ailment is included, in the case of women, childbirth. That's considered a type of what passes as substandard health. The menstruation period is considered along those lines, so women are exempt from fasting during those periods.
Yeah, speaking of that, there's what might appear to some people an inconsistency. Women, for instance, during their menstrual cycles, they're not required to make up the salat. If they miss, they shouldn't pray while they're menstruating, and so they're not required to make these up. But as far as Ramadan is concerned, when they're menstruating, they're required to make up these days of fasting. So some people might think that this is an inconsistency. How do you respond to that?
Well, the way to respond to that is to realize that once a salah is its time lapses, then it is no longer due. Even forget about menstruating women, forget about all of this other stuff that comes. If an average Muslim, for some reason, couldn't make, let's say, Salat al-Asr, it could be any salah, but I'm just giving an example, and Salat al-Asr is gone, that's it. You can't even make up for that.
And that goes back to the ayah, Inna as-salata lil-mu'minina
kitaban mawquta. Exactly, very good. So, to take it just one step further, all of these have a social meaning. All of these meaning as-salah, as-zakah, as-siyam, al-hajj. They all have a social meaning. Of course, now is not the time to go into the social meaning of the hajj or the social meaning of zakah. But right now, because the issues that are brought up are between as-salah and as-siyam. So the question is, you can make up for one, not make up for the other. That's for those who say that you can make up for the salah that is already gone, that's time has already lapsed. Because there are other fiqh opinions say once the time has lapsed, you can make the qada salah for it, but that's in the hope. It's not like you substituted for a lapsed salah. It's just, an extra hope that, I'm just trying to do my best and make up for what I couldn't do at the required time. But a salah, there's what is called the iqama of a salah. And that, here's where we come to the social significance of salah. The social significance of salah ties in with the social significance of as-siyam. But as-salah is more or less, it is a personal and a collective effort. I'm trying not to go into these details, but one thing leads to the other. The ayah that many people have memorized. Well, anyways, to make it a little short here, as-siyam, if a woman, going back to your question, if a woman is menstruating and then she has to make up for those days, it's because as-siyam is more of a social responsibility than it is a personal responsibility.
Okay, let's just hold that thought, and we'll pick it up again in the next segment. we're going to take a short break now for a message from our sponsors. Please come back and listen to the rest of the explanation. We hope to see you back.
Welcome Ramadan. Welcome Ramadan.
And welcome back. We were just talking in the last segment about the social significance of as-siyam and as-salah and what they have to do with each other. And so we were right in the middle of that explanation, so we'll pick up where we left off. And so, Imam, if you could go ahead and continue with the explanation that you were giving with regard to missing as-salah and making up for fasting if you miss days of fasting.
Yeah. You see, if a person misses a salah, and there's the fuqaha that say you can make up for that, and the way you make up for it is you pray. But if you miss a siyam, and the recommended makeup for missing the siyam is to feed those who are in need. وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين. It wasn't said that those who are unable to fast should engage in a ritual of some sort. You would think that the absence of a ritual would be compensated by the performance of a ritual. But in the case of unlike a salah, in the case of siyam, if you are unable to fast, then you make up for that by paying money. And in the strict sense of the word, paying money is not a ritual. Well, let's not say pay money. Let's go back to the original wording of the Quran and say, you feed those who are in need.
That's right, yeah.
So feeding those who are in need, it'amu masakin or it'amu miskin, this is compensating for a ritual, so to speak.
Right, right.
So because of these differences, as you know, maybe as subtle as they may be for some people, you can't apply what is applicable to a salah.
Yeah, it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, is
right.
Also applicable to a siyam.
Yeah, so staying with this, that treating a certain aspect of Islam as a ritual, basically as a personal dimension, which doesn't have a social validation. Yeah. There are plenty of people that use this license, claiming to be either sick or traveling, to not fast at all. And they think that they're getting away with something. And so fiqh in certain schools of thought, it tries to legislate a person's devotion or attachment to Allah. Wouldn't it be better for this class of people in society, the first among equals, alladhina amanu, to try their best to deliver or to build up a social taqwa in society so that people don't entertain such ideas of trying to fool Allah or trying to get away with something?
Yeah, good point. The reason why many of these people, or some of these people, the reason why they try to get away with breaking loose from the obligations of fasting, etc., is because there's no taqwa. Taqwa is, this brings us into very interesting areas.
It's not. Is this something that you can legislate? Can you legislate taqwa?
No, you cannot legislate taqwa. Taqwa is, you see, this brings us to, as I said, a very important issue, and that important issue is governance. Because when you speak about legislation, you're speaking about an act of government. And matters that pertain to the conscience cannot cannot be controlled or cannot be defined or cannot be legalized by governments. In non-Islamic social orders, governments grow to such a degree that they want to substitute for a person's conscience. That's why you have in the secular world, you have a lot of people arguing, how big can a government become? How intrusive can a government be? And the government sees its responsibility from the angle that we have a social order that is failing. So the government tries to interfere. It tries to enter into the realm of the private lives of people to maintain that society that it's responsible for. Mm-hmm. Which tells you that once that consciousness of taqwa is absent from the groundswell of society, governments will never be able to compensate for it. You turn this around and you say that in a divinely defined social order, in an Islamic society, another way of saying it, in an Islamic society, it is the conscience, the public conscience that is preponderant, not the government. The government is very limited. The government exists. Those who argue for an absence of a government in an Islamic social order, they don't understand what a government is all about. And they don't understand what an Islamic society is all about. But the interplay here is a very different one in Islamic societies as opposed to secular or anti-godly societies. So that is why there's this very high premium placed on taqwa, which is, if we wanted to play with words, we would say a taqwa is the personal government of a person. The conscience that within which a taqwa belongs, it functions in the course of life as if itself it is a government. And so when that coalesces, when you take 1 and 1 and 5 and 5 and 10 and 10, and you put these consciousness of taqwa together, you blend them in together, you have what substitutes for a government without being, in the technical sense of the word, the government we understand in today's secular or non-godly societies.
So in a sense, taqwa is something that in an institutional fashion really socializes morality. It spreads morality over all of society. And I think that in the tafsir, the way that you characterize the relationship between legality and morality is that legality is an instrument in society that socializes morality, and morality is an instrument in society that individualizes the application of law.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah. Or in another way of saying it is, morality keeps on growing, but it grows to such an extent that it needs a little support
from public institutions.
From public institutions, and that's where the government comes in and they become synergistic.
That's all very, very interesting, and I wish we had more time to get into this in a lot more detail, but unfortunately, again, we've run out of time. We're going to continue these discussions in the future programs. We'd like you to join in with us. We're delighted to have your participation thus far. Stay tuned again to the same channel, same time. We'll be back again tomorrow to continue these discussions. Again, should you like to go into any of these aspects in a little bit more detail, please feel free to refer to the Ascendant Quran. It deals with this topic and many, many other topics. It gives you a much better understanding of the Quran than almost anything out there, especially if you're an English reader. It's presented again in very simple language. The concepts are displayed with a view to try to get the readers to understand them. And so we feel that you'll find it very easy to interact with this particular tafsir. And so that concludes our discussion for today. Thank you for joining us on this Ramadan journey. My name is Afif Khan, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.